But looks like we don't have many people today. So yeah, I think in the last meeting we talked about how to treat the source material view in the refresh state. I think there is a consensus that for source material view, we're going to check the view state, right? The view ID, view version ID, that would be the source view state. We're also going to check the source material view storage table state, like snapshot ID in the source table state. So I think that's a consensus. And later on, I think Walla had a email to follow up, but I don't fully understand because what he was discussing, I don't think it can work. Anyway, I replied to his email. I haven't seen a response from Walla. But at least from the last community thing, seems like there is consensus. We're going to treat source and material view as a material table. So we're going to, the refresh state won't check recursively for the material view, source material view. But if an engine wants to do recursive iteration, engine can look at the source material view definition and recursively go down in there. If engine want to do it, they can do that. But at least from the material view refresh state tracking, we are not going to go recursively for source material view. That was a consensus I remember from last meeting. I don't know. Tyler or Kevin, you also there. If you my understanding is incorrect, you can also correct me.
I see you talking to a lot, but I can't hear anything.
Now, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
Hear me?
No, it's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Steven. Whatever you summarize, it was my understanding also too. And we were just discussing about which location we are going to put. What was it? Interval.
Yeah, the second discussion we're talking about the max staleness config.
Mm-hmm.
That config was in the design doc discussion. I think Benny definitely familiar, and but it's not in the PR, the spec PR.
Okay, let's include it then, right?
So the one question is because I think this config, there's two different usage. One, it can be used for the like a refresh. Let's say if you define this one with guided refresh interval, guide how refresh should behave. Let's say if we set the max staleness as 60 minutes, then the refresh logic will typically do maybe every 30 minutes or whatever it is to make sure it's less than this one. So also the question, should we this called max staleness or should this called I don't know, target staleness, or and where should it be defined? Should it be defined in the view or should it be defined in the story table? I think either can work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was the last discussion actually. The previous what you mentioned, that the view resolution things, we already solved it in that the previous meeting, right? Everybody was the consensus about how we are going to resolve the view.
Correct. Yeah. So the thing we didn't conclude last time is a max staleness config. Should we include it and where should it be? Benny, do you? And remember, you also talked about this in your email.
Yeah, that max staleness. First of all, I mean, it's a property of like the way I see max staleness is like once you produce a materialization, like how long can you keep using it for, right? And it's really like at the kind of like at the leaf, right? And it gets a little bit more complicated when a materialization depends on another materialization, right? Like MV is built on top of MVs, right? And so, you can't really like inherit like this like max staleness, right? Because like if your previous materialization that you were built on is only valid for another 30 minutes, then does that mean your current materialization is only valid for the remaining 30 minutes, or is this max staleness like still the 60 minutes, or
Well, I think if for the first question, how we treat the source material view, if we already agree that the source refresh state is not going to be recursive.
Yeah.
Then that means if my max, let's say I have a new material view, if I define the max time as 60 minutes, that means if my refresh state is less than 60 minutes old compared to the source material view story table, then I'm fresh. I can do that. But if the engine says, hey, I always want a very strict behavior, you can ignore this max staleness, because if you want very strict behavior, You're going to ignore it. You're going to recursively go down the tree.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's what I was saying as well. So it's basically the staleness of the materialization. Like your max staleness is that time. So I think also that it makes sense to define this on the view, not the storage table.
Yeah, I also agree with that. That's also my take but either can work. I think define the view seems to make a little more logical sense because we're about the definition of how freshness, how the view should be determined for the freshness, right?
Yes, I agree. What was the benefit of defining it on the materialized table?
Well, I think one of the benefits you do that, you can just load the storage table. You can see, hey, I have refresh state. I have this config. I know how to evaluate. I guess that's maybe
If we define on the view, we are not able to do that.
you can. Yeah, you can. If you always load the view together with the storage table, yeah, I don't think it matters too much.
And storage table will not be served without view, right? We know that because this is materialized view.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I remember some people saying, hey, if I can I just consume a storage table directly without even loading the view?
This is, you can even consume the Parquet files directly, right? This is not, no one is blocking you.
Yeah.
If you are going, go ahead.
Yeah, the catalog doesn't, right now that the catalog doesn't restrict the storage table unless the catalog restricts the storage table loading, then you can consume storage table, that material view directly.
How we can restrict that catalog site? Should we update the REST spec for that? It should not return the storage tables.
No, actually, I remember during early discussion, people talk, hey, if I do table maintenance on the storage table, I maybe just load the storage table, do the compaction, for example, hypothetically.
Yes, you're right. You want to do the compaction, right?
Yeah, I remember that's one of the discussion where people, hey, should the catalog hide the material storage table or not? I remember that's one of the points we brought up. But anyway, back to the question about where do we store the max staleness? Yeah, I think putting on the view seems makes sense. Part of the material view definition.
But what is the benefit having on the view side then? You know, because if we are putting on that settings on storage table, the compaction and other things also can align based on that settings.
Well, the storage table does compaction does not care about the freshness.
Currently, but if it's going to be updated in 2 minutes, then I can delete.
Well, you can also, yeah, I don't know. Does let's say compaction need to be load the view definition or not? You can also load the view definition if you know this is a storage table for material view. There's nothing prevent.
I agree. That's why I'm trying to understand. Putting the settings on the view side, what is the benefit?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you need. I don't know if I guess probably just logically, it's just part of the view definition, right? There's a config about the view behavior, define the view. Just conceptually, I feel it's a little bit cleaner. If any, I don't know if any other like physical benefits.
Well, actually, I thought it was like let's say a planner is going to query the view, right? And then you know, it sees this max staleness setting, you know, let's say set to an hour, right? Then it finds a storage table, right? And then on the storage table, it sees that the storage table is older than an hour. Based on the snapshot history, you should be able to see, okay, the time that it was built, it was older than an hour, and so then it's considered stale, right? Based on the max staleness setting, if you want to, like, you know, follow it.
So Benny, I think the question is, what's the benefit if we store this config in the view versus the install table? I don't know if any like a physical benefit. To me, I still only think it just logically makes a little more sense. I don't know if I get a performance benefit or let's say some like a functional benefit. I think that's what Tyler was trying to get. Do we get any of those?
Yeah, exactly. This is my looking way. I agree with you. Logically, it has to be part of the materialized view spec.
is any other benefit like performance or as a functionally or feature wise, is any benefit stored in the view side versus stored table side? I cannot think of anything. I don't know if anybody can think of any benefit.
Okay, so this max staleness setting, it is a period, right?
Correct.
It's not a timestamp, right? So it's a
Correct.
period. So it's like
Correct.
saying
Yeah.
like, you know, 1 hour, right? One
Yes.
day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, you can, so wouldn't you create a view first, right? And then have these settings on it, but you may not have materialized it yet. So you don't have a storage table, right? And then eventually when you get to materializing it, that's when, so I mean, like this is a setting. It's like a definition of the materialization.
Okay. Yeah. That's actually a good point. Meaning when we define this in the view definition, the store table doesn't even exist yet because we haven't do the first refresh. Right? We cannot even store in the store table.
Okay, yes, this is a good catch.
Yeah,
Would
that's
you
a good point. Yeah.
would you like to review that spec change on the GitHub PR? You know, then we can go step by step what is missing or what is.
Sure. That seems good. Let me find the spec PR. Okay.
I can share that on chat.
I have it here.
Okay, nice.
Let me share my screen.
But Benny, you brought a good point, right? We should not even discuss that. There is no storage table at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then Steve, the basically the place for the staleness configuration is very obvious. It is materialized view.
Yeah. This is the one. Okay. So yeah, I think Yang updated the PR on the source. He updated the PR for the source table, a source material view. Yeah. Yeah, I made some like smaller comments there.
Okay.
Yeah, this beta top and nested material view.
Oh, okay. This is what we discussed, that right? Exactly.
Yeah, last time, yeah. Basically, for the source material view, there will be entry in the source view states for the logical view definition. There will be also entry in the source table state for the source material views solid table. So that's what we want to do. Other things are all the same, yeah.
Okay. Is there any open item then for this materialized view? Maybe we should review fully.
Yeah, I think for this spec, I don't, from what my understanding is, the only item left is a max staleness config. And what should we add it and where to add it? And yeah, because source material view, that's all have the consensus last meeting already.
Yeah,
So,
just drop the comment on here then.
yeah, so makes it looks like Benny had made a good argument that that should be in the view definition, right?
Yes.
So that's some. I don't know if any other open item. Benny, can you think of any other open item? Or,
I mean, you know, like in the email, I mean, this gets into more details about, you know, being able to tell the user like what type of, how stale is the data that's in the materialization, right? And the idea was that you can also include, so in the materialization right now, we have last refresh start time, right? So that tells you like when the you know the materialization was built, right? But the problem with using that is that tells you when the materialization was built, right? So that gives you some idea of like, you know, it contains data that was, you know, maybe 3 hours old, right? But in reality, if this materialization is actually built on other materializations, right, then your oldest data is actually what was in that previous materialization, not like when you first built this current materialization, right? So does that make sense? So if you're looking at like how stale is the data, it's not necessarily like when you built this materialization, right? So
Well,
if you plan this materialization with an even older materialization, right, which contains data from yesterday, right, then you actually kind of need to know that information. So that was the concept of having the oldest data in the table or earliest like refresh state of this materialization, and it would have to inherit from the materialization that you were built on top of.
I feel this probably a decision for the engine on how it want to evaluate the freshness, because from the like item spec, we just want to provide those like knobs for engine to work.
Yeah.
For example, the scenario you talk about, right? If we have a chained material view,
Yeah.
I can imagine, let's say, for some engine that well, some features they say, no, I don't care about how my refresh state irrelevant to my upstream, which is like a source material view storage table. I don't care about how that state is, because that's a separate concern. If I just want to do independent refresh, then I don't care if that my source material view is a one day old or 2 day old. As long as my refresh is relative fresh compared to its state, I'm okay. So I can imagine this can be a feature, but some engine maybe also for some feature they want, oh no, I want to recursively, then they can do it. As long as our spec allow them to do that, enable those. So yeah, I feel the current spec seem to be able to support both kind of scenarios, right?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, what I just described, you could potentially, I think you can derive that information from a graph too, right? So like, because we are tracking refresh start time, then if you wanted to get the earliest data, the earliest refresh, you can look at your dependencies. So like you can look at because now we have materialization storage table in there, right? So you can look at that. You can look at your upstream materialization, see what is this refresh time was, right?
Sure. If you want to do that, yeah. If the engine chooses to do it, but I think some engine for some behavior they don't want to do that. Then they don't care about the max staleness config in the upstream source material view.
Yeah.
Before this meeting, not this one, the first one, I just did some research about how the databases or warehouses are handled at this, the nested structure. Except the Redshift and Oracle, none of them is allowed the nested structure. It doesn't mean they don't allow the nested structure, but for example, Oracle say that after 20 nested, the structure, they don't allow rest of them. And only the Redshift is allow infinitive nested structure. And BigQuery, Snowflake, and others, they don't allow the nested structure or resolving the nested structure on top of Materialized View, on top of the Materialized View use cases.
My network seems to be bad. I always lost you for a few seconds.
I say that only the Oracle and Redshift is provide nested resolution for the Materialized View.
I see.
Besides of that, the rest of them, they don't allow the nested Materialized View resolution for any cases. All of them is just depend on the the one level below, so whatever they have.
That's Redshift and yeah, thank you for the research, Tyler. That's super helpful. Does Redshift and Oracle, they only support that recursive behavior, or they support both recursive and non-recursive behavior?
Oracle, I don't know. I just deliberately look at the nested, the recursive behavior. Oracle just limit depth is 20, and the Redshift support infinity. But I didn't know. Maybe I can do the research for that also.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to get 20 levels deep, but it's not. It wouldn't be hard to have like a view that is built on like many materializations, right? A view that joins other like 10 views, and each of those 10 views are all materialized, right?
Yeah, I see. But those like a deep nesting, a deep recursion, it is a concern if you do the recursive iteration, that if a deep chain, let's say 10 steps or
Yeah.
20 steps, it can become like really, really complicated for the, and when people build those kind of deep chain, the intention is likely just, hey, they only care about their immediate parents, not go all the way. Because kind of like when we build the ETL pipeline, right? When you the ETL pipeline, when you consume the end table, do you care about like a 20 step ahead of you, are they fresh or not? No, I don't. I only care about the table I produced.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
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 Or as a supporting, the document I may create that document, the just research for different databases. I can create a chart how they are supporting for the nested resolution.
Sure.
Because all of the discussions just stuck with the nested resolution, like refresh start time. We say that how we are going to handle the nested resolution, or the other staleness is still we discuss the same thing.
So this refresh start timestamp here will be used in conjunction with the max staleness config, right? This will be used in conjunction with that.
Yeah. Right.
And also, the other thing actually I'm kind of, because let's say my max staleness is 60 minutes and the last refresh start timestamp is from 50 minutes ago. But my source table has changed. Is that only related to refresh, or does it also care about
It is only related to fresh. If you scroll up, there is a state also. Stale and blah blah. Just scroll up a little bit. Here during.
Yeah, here. This one.
What does mean the stale, right? Snapshot ID does not match for at least one source table. Indicate that a refresh operation needs to be performed.
Here we don't talk about the max staleness and also the refresh start timestamp. We didn't talk. Because in this spec PR, there's no max staleness config. So if we introduce this one, we will need to, because this is just based on the
snapshot IDs.
Yeah, snapshot ID. If we want to use the max staleness, I'm also curious, does that relevant to the refresh start time or refresh to my source table when that commit happens? Does that make sense? For example, well, I guess if my refresh
Yeah, it should be. That's sticky situation, because like it may have taken you a very long time to, like, by the time you query the data at a certain time, but it took you 30 minutes to produce the materialization and finally commit the snapshot, right?
Yes.
What you really care about was that when you first started the materialization build job, right? And so yeah, it wouldn't be the snapshot. It wouldn't come from like the snapshot summary, but it would have to be this refresh state that we're adding.
So I was talking about the timestamp of the source table. Let's say the source table changed, let's say 70 minutes ago. Okay, and if my refresh startness, yeah, I guess that should be the same. If the refresh start timestamp is 50 minutes ago, that should already cover that snapshot. Probably is not a problem.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So actually, there's two interpretations for this max staleness, right?
Yeah.
It could be based on like from the time you built this materialization, or it could be built based on the time when the source data actually changed.
Correct. That's the thing I would talk about. If we do the second mode, then we don't need like refresh start timestamp.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, actually, yeah, I remember this. We had talked about this for like Trino has some behavior that it can handle for this.
Because you can just say, hey, if the source table, right? If there's no table commit for all the source table in the source table state.
Yeah.
There's no commit for less than 60 minutes. Then I'm fresh.
Yeah.
Then we don't need this refresh start timestamp.
Well, so there is another benefit, right? So let's say you build a view that joins like non-iceberg tables. So let's say you have an iceberg view. You materialize a view that is joining from like Oracle, right? So at that point in time, you don't know like what is the data that's in. You'll never have a snapshot ID for Oracle, right? So if you say max staleness of 1 hour, at least you can say, okay, well, I'll use my last refresh. I mean, when the refresh started as like this, as you know, the starting point.
I agree. So, but by the way, I think for this iceberg MV spec, we're talking about only iceberg table, iceberg views. There's no non-iceberg
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
That's the scope for now. But
Right.
I do think what you said, hey, if we have refresh start timestamp, it's a little bit easier to evaluate. You just look at the timestamp compared to the config. That's very easy to use.
And we assume that your calculation is always stay same. If it's taking 50 minutes to calculate materialized view, next time it will also take the 50 minutes to calculate. Doesn't matter when it's going to finish your materialized view refresh job.
But okay, but I think this probably a point we can also raise in the dev analyst to say how do we treat the staleness in terms of time. Anyway, that's two way, right? One, we use that refresh start timestamp.
Yeah.
To compute the diff. Second way, you just look at the source table. Is there any commit within this max staleness? Right. With the second approach, we don't need that start timestamp, assuming that everything is iceberg view or tables.
Yeah.
So then which way should we go?
Line 55, what it at least it says the same thing to me, you know, the snapshot ID.
It doesn't tell the time period. Just hey, is it stale just based on this actually pretty strong freshness guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
They just hey, if anything is stale at all, it's stale. But with the max staleness config, meaning we're relaxing that condition, you can allow to be drift lagging behind for up to, let's say, 60 minutes.
I see. In streaming, like late latency.
Well, it's just that sometimes I don't need this material view to be refreshed strictly. I can wait. I can allow up to certain time of delay in terms of the refresh state.
This is very similar behavior for streaming lateness, right? When you define a window, then you say that, okay, the window is okay, but if any element is late, I am fine to wait 10 more minutes, for example.
So this is especially true for the material view that refresh asynchronously, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have scheduled refresh, let's say 30 minutes. Hey, I'm okay to use this table, kind of like an ETL pipeline, right? I don't have to be absolutely fresh. I allow my business use case, I allow, let's say 30 minutes delay. So if my source table change, as you said, Tala, if the source table is a stream injection table, if they get to update every 5 minutes or every 2 minutes, I'm allow that a little bit delay in terms of refresh.
Then max staleness we should define somewhere else. Is there any settings for the max staleness as a parameter? The user should be able to define it, right? And they created their materialized view.
So I lost you. My network seems to have some problem. Right?
Maybe is it my network or?
No, you sound like me.
Yeah, I think it's my network.
Okay, sorry. What I'm trying to say that, you know, basically the user should be able to define the max staleness when they define their materialized view, because this is a business need, whatever they want.
Good. Yeah.
Is there any field for on the spec for that?
So that should be in the view definition, right? Where we're going to, in addition to the reference table, in the view definition, view metadata, in addition to the story table, we need another field called, let's say, max staleness or something.
We need to introduce that field in this spec change.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
It'll be an optional field.
Mm-hmm.
So then I think I think we can bring this up, but seems like in this meeting, we think this should be in the view metadata. And the next question is, do we need this refresh start timestamp?
Yeah. So here's a kind of argument for having it still, right? So like even if max staleness is used to like when a source table's data changes, and then that's when the clock starts for evaluating max staleness. Even if we define the max staleness semantic like that, right? I mean, I think the refresh start time milliseconds, like it's still useful, like in your ETL example, right, where you're building a pipeline, and you just need to at least know, like this materialization that you were built on top of, like when was this data like queried, right? At the minimum, you should at least have this information, right? Like I gave you that example where it takes an hour to build a materialization, right? So you really should know like when data was queried for that materialization. Right,
I agree. Yeah, yes, I think that's a great point. You're saying
thing, you know, you want to track that.
I agree.
If you don't capture this, you'll lose this information.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, even if we don't use it for the freshness determination, it's still useful information. Yeah, that seems to make sense.
Yeah, but also an engine could use this also for freshness, right? I mean, for freshness evaluation. Let's say you're building the ETL pipeline, but you have some rule in your ETL pipeline that says, you know, I can't use a materialization that's more than 60 minutes old. You know, that's my rule. So at least you have this there to help you with that.
Okay, let me recap a little. So we will add the max staleness config. We can discuss what to be the best config name into the view metadata, right? Into the storage table with, in the storage table, we're going to add some max staleness config. We will read the question to the data analyst to how the staleness determination should it depend on the source table days or depend on the refresh start timestamp. That's a question we can discuss on the data analyst. And we will, just let me quickly finish that. We will keep this refresh start timestamp, even if they don't use for the fraction determination, they still use for information to capture. Right. Sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
I just dropped a comment for that, you know, the capture that if you think that it is wrong, you know, that I can update it. Just refresh your page.
In the Google Doc?
No, this is a PR, yes.
Okay.
So right now we have snapshot-based staleness.
Yeah, this is pretty strict. Basically, just meaning if my storage table is not refreshed based on the latest snapshot, it's stale.
Right. So what we want with the max staleness is there's now like another time-based staleness determination.
Correct. That'd be optional. If you don't define that, that means 0, meaning we are strict staleness.
Right.
If you define to 60 minutes, you allow up to,
Yeah, and it's either or, right? It's like either one of them is true, we have to refresh. Can we do the max staleness as a follow-up? Do we want to address that now? If it's optional, can we start with saying, okay, we're going to do the simplest snapshot-based ones?
Yeah, I think the max staleness config should be optional.
Right. I guess I'm saying, can we do it in like 2 steps for a spec change, or do you want to address everything now?
Oh,
as in, you know, this looks pretty clear, right? Like we in Iceberg we move from snapshot to snapshot. Over here we move from snapshot to snapshot. When you introduce another time component, if it's optional, it makes sense as a like another change to the spec. I don't know. If you think it's easier to move things along right? Because like right now, it seems, when I look at this, it seems pretty clear what we're doing. And like this time-based thing is just another dimension, right?
Yeah, I think that's why. I think that's probably the reason why Yang didn't include that max staleness config in the initial PR.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it is a good point that Benny brought up, that like, hey, we should maybe here or somewhere capture why like refresh start time is here, right? Like I feel like people will ask about this. And go through the same motion we just went through, right? To say, okay, we want to at least capture the information, because otherwise, you'll lose this, and there's no way to bring to figure out when the start time was, right? Even without the max staleness conversation, we need this.
Correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, typically we don't add those wording into the spec itself. I don't know. We can add the PR comments to provide some context.
We have like implementation notes for like the table spec, where it's like,
Appendix.
yeah,
Okay.
or like appendix. I don't know, like it's not that big of a deal, I guess. But
Yeah,
I think,
system appendix here.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I do think that, yeah, add some context on what the request date time set should be.
yeah, because when we start talking about the time-based one, this will come up, but then it's like, okay, why do we, we're gonna go back to the same conversations. So
Yeah, I think
yeah,
yeah. So I think regarding whether we should include this max staleness, I think since we already discussed this topic already, let's see within, let's continue that discussion and see if people okay to add it to this spec.
yeah,
Doing two steps is fine, but let's say if we, yeah, I do think that as a max staleness give us the flexibility to support different kind of use cases, right? Because some users they don't need strict staleness.
right,
Just give them the flexibility to achieve those kind of use cases.
right. Yeah, I think it's just like whatever is easier to move along, right? Like if it's better to just have the same discussion now for max staleness, then yeah, we could just proceed and add to where we define staleness. If it's better to like make incremental progress, right? To say most of the whatever lines of changes here is already good, we'll append to it and add like this optional staleness configuration, right?
Yeah, I don't mind doing the incrementally. I don't mind doing multiple phases. Let's see how this conversation goes, and if we have a lot of kind of conflicting views and it's difficult to resolve
Yeah,
in short time, we can drop it. But if there's not much
Rejection.
yeah, rejection, we can try to include this one.
yeah. But like the max staleness wouldn't change anything here. That's already put, right? It's a append. So
yeah, it would. For example, in the staleness here that Tala mentioned,
right,
this need to be changed.
right. But like it's a addition. It's like a when we do the PR diff, it's easier to figure out what's going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of feel the way this is currently written is a little bit overly strict.
Yes.
As in, like, it's like written as if like, a materialization can only be used if it's fresh, and if it's stale, then you gotta rebuild it, right? Refresh it. Whereas in reality, like when you're building the ETL pipelines, which is a very legitimate use case, or when you want to have materializations that are always there to accelerate, like BI queries, and they can eventually they can be stale for a short period of time, right? That's allowed, right? Because it's more important to keep your dashboard queries fast, right? Then I think that use case is so important that like we should at least like address this in this initial version of the spec and say, well, you can be in a partially stale state, like, or within your staleness tolerance, right? So how do we account for allowing having some staleness tolerance, right? And that's where the max staleness property comes in, right? And also the max staleness property is pretty common, right? I think it's like you'll see this across different engines, and also given the fact that like if we don't include the non-iceberg tables use cases, right? I think iceberg metadata in itself is a very good way to express that, oh, data changed, right? We know the data changed. And so now we can start the clock on, okay, well, after the data change, you have an hour of staleness tolerance to use the stale materialization.
Yeah. So let's try, and unless we get a strong pushback and hard to reach consensus, we can do it in phases. But if we can move this along relatively quickly in the first, that'd be ideal.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I will summarize those discussion points in the 10 minutes. So,
Yeah.
okay.
I have one question. Let's say that, let's forget about the max stillness, and we agree about most of the things so far. What is the next step? Should we announce on the dev list that, hey, we are going to implement, or should one of us start implementing this spec?
I think it's a little bit too early for that. I think I will send the dev minutes to summarize what we discussed today and the open question on the max stillness. For example, do we depend on the refresh start timestamp, or do we depend on the source table snapshot change or commit updates? That's still one open question there. I don't know if that's a preference. Benny, do you have a preference on those two, or?
Well, I think it should be based on like when the source table has changed.
Yeah, I agree. That's also my leaning also. So the refresh start timestamp is mostly just informational.
Right.
Okay. So, but at least those two options we can list there, and we can tell that some people were favoring the first option. We can talk about that. So yeah, we're not talk about implementation yet. So if there's no, if this is an open question we can resolve, and there's no other open question brought up, then maybe we can discuss we can finalize this PR and start voting.
Yeah. From what I remember, Jan did have a POC from a long time ago. I think it's somewhere. I don't know how fresh that is, but it's somewhere. But yeah, I think just like moving the conversation along. Anything else, Stephen, that you think will help move that conversation?
So
the max
yeah,
stillness.
I guess we just need to resolve the max stillness discussion, and then we just need to have enough people to kind of weigh in to say, hey, this. And once we resolve this open question and people weigh in this to be good, then I think the next step after that should be just voting.
Okay.
I do feel it's pretty close. I do feel, yeah, max stillness is something we can just. This PR has been reviewed. You can see how many comments there. Comments will be reviewed extensively.
And look at the Google Docs too. There's the wealth of information on there.
Cool. All right. So I'll send an email to the dev mailing list, and yeah, hopefully we can resolve this open question, then we can get to vote.
Sounds good. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, bye.